Penn State, I'm not sure that Penn State is on.
Welcome to a very special live episode of Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Wednesday, July 23rd. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Texas game in 38 days, the game against Michigan in 129 days. If you're planning your next event, make it unforgettable with Grateful Griddle, Columbus's favorite food truck, serving up smash burgers, gourmet sandwiches, and good vibes. Book your catering today at GratefulGriddleOH.com. Joined by Tony Gerdeman at Big Ten Media Days in Las Vegas. Tony, it was Ohio State Day, so we get a chance to talk to Ryan Day, Caleb Downs, Jeremiah Smith, and Sonny Styles. Lots of interesting stuff from them. I want to get to that a little later because we also get a chance to talk to OSU AD Ross Bjork, and they say timing is everything in life. And so after Ryan Day did his interview, I asked Ross, hey, can I grab you for a few minutes? I just want to ask you some questions about NIL and how you guys are handling and all that kind of stuff, because we've had people on our board asking, hey, why are they doing this? Why are they approaching it like that? So great, you go straight to the horse's mouth. He was very gracious, got a great interview with him, posted it on our board, and then someone said, did you see the news? And I said, what news? And it turned out that as I was talking to Ross Bjork about NIL, news broke about a major change in NIL that then potentially changes some stuff for Ohio State. So why don't you just sort of start by explaining what actually changed today, and then we can get into what it maybe means for Ohio State.
Yeah, as with all breaking news, this came from Ross Dellinger at Yahoo, talking about how the House attorneys of the House settlement, their attorneys and the power conferences have worked out a deal to relax the collective third-party NIL, quote-unquote, roadblocks, because initially when a lot of these deals were submitted to NIL Go, the ones that were coming from the collectives were getting kicked back and being denied as like not valid business purposes. Now it seems like they're going to relax or revise the definition of valid business purposes to where they fall under the scope of what collectives and other third-party NIL deals fall under. So that's kind of the change. Now they'll still need to go through NIL Go. It's just the clearinghouse now has a little bit different directive and direction on what to allow and what not to allow.
Yeah, one of the last interviews of the day was Brett Bielema, who's a great quote on literally everything. So I asked him about this, and he said, a little bit too soon to make some specific remarks on it. But he kind of drew that same distinction where if a collective can pay a player, if a collective wants to pay a player $1 million, it still has to go through NIL Go. And if the collective in NIL Go says, this is $50,000 worth, this is not $1 million worth, then that, you still have some of the guardrails there that I think the folks in charge would like. How will that hold up in terms of, how will that hold up in terms of how things go? We'll have to see.
Schools are always going to try to push the boundaries. So this got denied, but what if we just do this and let's see what we can get away with? And then when stuff gets denied, you're like, this is, we need a new rule.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see how much impact this has, how often they still get denied, and then what does that mean for Ohio State?
Well, and that's kind of an interesting question, because Ohio State has, I think, taken a somewhat conservative approach to things over the last few months. And you've sort of seen teams go out and, I don't want anyone to assume I'm talking about the Georgia Bulldogs here, because I'm not. But you have people squealing their tires and drag racing off the line with this to a certain degree, and you can look at the NIL, look at the recruiting rankings and go, hey, they're not normally near the top, and they are this year. So you have teams that are taking that sort of approach, and then you have other teams that are taking, a more measured approach, or a more kind of wait and see approach. And I know that there's been a lot of, well, obviously this is how it's going to shake out, and that's not a luxury that people in charge of stuff actually have, just assuming that how something's going to shake out. So Ohio State's taken a little bit more of a measured approach right now, but it feels like this is maybe a little bit more of a green light to, okay, now you can sort of expand what you're doing. And, there is this idea that, they deactivated their collectives, which they did, but that then they had nothing. And it's like, no, that I think is a pretty common misperception that, yes, they sort of deactivated the foundation and the 1870 club, but that doesn't mean that they've completely gotten out of the NIL business and they're like mothballed an old battleship or something. That's not what they did.
No, they brought the collectives in-house essentially and created the Buckeye Sports Group, which is Ohio State's own marketing arm to go out to businesses and say, hey, look at this guy do you want this guy to endorse your product. So they've just brought it in-house. And as Ross, when I think we were both talking to him, he's like, the term collective is, it's people use it, but it's like, what are you providing? What goods are you providing? What is the purpose of it? And the purpose of Ohio State's Buckeye Sports Group is the same as the collectives, where you want to provide third-party NIL deals to the players. And he said, we've been waiting. We're plug and play. That was his word. We're plug and play. So if this is because he was like, I was showing him on my phone, like, this is, you see the Ross Dellinger story? He's like, okay, well, I'm not surprised.
He's like, no, I was talking to Tom when that broke.
So it's like, he didn't want to go all in on it, but, just speaking like in generalities, like, this is not unexpected because it seems like this is an easier fix until Congress can, do some stuff, because the attorneys weren't happy that the clearinghouse that the clearinghouse was kicking back some collective stuff. And now Ohio State, they're prepared. The question that you see from a lot of people is that Ohio State wasn't the only team just slow playing this.
Right.
But some people think that they are, because this is the team that I am focused on and this is what they're doing. Everybody else is not doing that, because I keep seeing this team and that team, and it's like, well, you're seeing 4 teams do it. Listen, I think all numbers are skewed in terms of who is and who isn't doing stuff. I think there's an argument that people have that Ohio State, by slow playing, that they've set themselves back and they have harmed themselves. Ryan Day, what he said today before this broke, but talking about if it does, or like just in the future, said what we don't want to do at Ohio State is make agreements or talk to people about certain deals and have to claw those things back because they don't get cleared. I don't think that's the right look for us at Ohio State. I think some folks are being more aggressive than others. That's their decision. We're always going to be aggressive, but we also want to make sure we're doing things the right way. And that has angered some people.
Well, but I think that's been a very common approach among teams. I mean, Brett Bielema, when he was talking about stuff, talked about the fact that what they don't want to do is get to a point where you have a player, if a player has been promised something, and he was talking about it in terms of other schools. Yeah. A player has been promised X amount of money, $1.5 million for a 2-year deal. And then you get to November and it's like, actually, we don't have that money. So, and, he said in the past, he's had guys who kind of came back to him like, and, he didn't have a scholarship. And that you can really have someone kind of left out in the cold at that point. And you don't want to be that school. You have seen other schools get sued for NIL stuff that didn't go through the way that it was supposed to. You don't want to be that school. And while I think the inclination everyone has is only my school is not doing this the way that fill in the blank school is, when we go back and we talk about, well, you got to look at what the teams that were really out front of this a couple of years ago in terms of being very, very aggressive with NIL when this first came out, and how did it go for them? And we always talk about Texas A&M and Miami, and the response is, well, you only talk about Texas A&M and Miami. It's like, yeah, because those were the couple teams that were really pushing the envelope that everyone's going, why aren't we doing what they're doing? And then you look at the results and it's not great. And not everyone is going absolutely pedal to the metal on this stuff right now.
What's Penn State doing?
There's all sorts of degrees of gray here. I'm very interested to talk to James Franklin on Wednesday. He'll be here. Dan Lanning will be here. I'll be so interested to hear from Dan Lanning and James Franklin, because those are two schools that are recruiting top 10 classes. So you're obviously taking part in this, but they're not recruiting in the way that USC is this season. So, my guess is that Lincoln Riley is not going to talk about it, but I think James Franklin and Dan Lanning will probably talk about it. So that is going to be very interesting, because I think there is so much gray. Ryan Day talked about the uncertainty and the gray areas. There are so many gray areas. Now, this is potentially one less gray area than there was before, which is good. How long will this stay? Will this get challenged in court? I'm sure at some point it will. If history is any indication, at some point it will. One thing that I thought was interesting when I talked to Ross Bjork was, we have two Rosses in the story, Dellinger, who broke the story, and Ross Bjork, the AD for Ohio State. When I talked to Ross Bjork, he talked about the fact that, I said, one thing I'm a little unclear on is, so you have a recruit, and the recruit has chosen a different school, and the recruit has been promised whatever the recruit has been promised. Is that guy done? Is that signed, sealed, delivered, and you would have to buy him out of his NIL contract, or just something that has been talked about in terms of future years? And he said, no, right now it is not legal to have signed anything as a high school player until August 1st. So theoretically, is everyone following the rules? We'll see. I'm reminded of these, if you've signed a contract before you're allowed to sign a contract, I'm reminded of the Stringer Bell line. Are you taking notes on a criminal conspiracy? I don't know that I'd want to be, writing down the things that I am doing against the rules, but according to the rules, the way they are written and the way that they were explained to me today by Ross Bjork, no one is signed, sealed, and delivered and gone anywhere. That can't happen until August 1st, that you could sign anything. And then in terms of actually having something go through the NIL Go clearinghouse, it sounds like that would be even later before that could happen.
Right. And schools can't pay players until they're part of the program. Now, collectives probably can because they're separate entities.
Yes.
But when you have boosters paying recruits, that's kind of a touchy situation. But I think there's still time to make up for any lost time, which is, I think, what Ohio State was planning for. Look, we'll be patient. We'll have time to catch up. Now, will they get everybody that they missed because of NIL? No.
Yeah.
But they're just. It sounds so homerish. They're just trying to do things the right way, Tom. But it's they wanted to stay within the rules. They wanted clarity. Ryan Day today. I'm excited to find out what the rules are so that I can play by them and then find out if they're actually going to be enforced. The gray area is what drives me insane. Now there's some of that gray area has been lifted, perhaps, but again, these still have to be passed by NIL Go. It's just they've relaxed some of the rules that would normally get some stuff denied. And then I asked Ross Bjork, how frustrating is it to just be sitting back while other programs are going out and getting this guy and that guy and that guy. And he said, yeah, look, every AD and every coach knows exactly what's happening around the world. And if we were allowing that to happen, then that's on us because we all said we wanted accountability. We all said we wanted rules. And if we've taken advantage of this sort of interim period, knowingly breaking the rules, again, that's on us. But that's where college athletics, we have to have a reset. And if we ever want durability, if we ever want the system to sustain itself, then now is the time to do it. So they've got more clarity on the rules, so now they can move forward. But again, their view is that what people were doing before was wrong. That's why they weren't doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, this is not to say that there is this incredible virginal purity and no one has ever broken. Right. No one is saying that about any school, but I think there has clearly been a spectrum of approaches to this, and Ohio State has been at least a little bit more on the cautious side than some schools, and there has been a lot of consternation about that approach. But I think when you are running an organization like Ohio State, you don't need to take unnecessary risks. I mean, right. Ryan Day has talked about, and I think Ross Bjork did as well, some of the inherent advantages that Ohio State has. And I mean, they didn't talk about this, but over the course of the last 70 years, there's no school in America that has been as consistently well above average as Ohio State. No one. There's not, Alabama's had extended down periods. Georgia's had extended down periods. Penn State, Michigan, they've had. There is not a school that can match Ohio State. Texas A&M, Oklahoma. Ohio State has been consistently at least very good for basically since the late 60s. So you're looking at 50 years, 60 years. I mean, it's there's enough that Ohio State has going for it. And this was true in terms of Nick Saban, Alabama, or Georgia, where they have other stuff to sell that they don't need to necessarily really push the envelope. I think it's telling that the programs that have been sort of singled out as really pushing the envelope are all the programs that have been, we're good at one point, but have kind of fallen off. And now you're desperately trying to dig yourself out of the pit. And,
it's like Tennessee signing Nico Iamaleava to a $8 million deal or whatever.
Yeah.
Because you have these desperate programs that have some desperate moments.
Mm-hmm.
They want to get back to where they were. Florida with Jaden Rashada, like wanting to make a splash, a desperate move, and then you see what happens afterwards.
Right. Yeah. It's always kind of messy, and you don't need to risk. There's no reason to risk messy if you are a program that's in that Georgia, Ohio State kind of tier. There's no reason to do it because you can do it in a little bit more of a deliberate way because you have a bunch of other stuff going for you. You have stuff to sell other than just NIL stuff.
What I do think is fascinating is I think a few weeks ago I was on the Mark Rogers show and he had Chip Brown, who covers Texas on, and he was saying the same thing about Texas as being conservative because they don't know, they want some clarity. And then like one day later, they somehow got some clarity because they started getting all kinds of recruits. And it can go like that,
right?
Where you decide, all right, we're going to go after it, and then they go and get a bunch of guys. So we'll see what Ohio State does.
Mm-hmm.
They say they're going to be aggressive within the rules, so I'm interested to see what that means to them.
Yeah, and then how aggressive are they is going to be how aggressive they are within the rules, like you said. But it also has to do a lot with program culture and some of the approach to payroll, which it's just so wild for me, having followed and covered college football for this long, to just be talking about the Big Ten's corporate partner, PayPal, who everything goes, the conference office, everything runs through the conference office, PayPal's money to the players. It's like, I'm sorry, what? If you woke up from a 2-year coma, it is a very different world. But Ryan Day talked about their approach to, there are plenty of schools that are going, dropping big bags on guys who are coming in who might not play for 2-3 years. I mean, you're recruiting a hotshot offensive tackle. How many of those guys are going to play as true freshmen? Probably not a lot. So then you've got a guy who's a true freshman who's not playing a ton, who's one of your highest paid players in your team. What does that do to the locker room? All that kind of stuff. What did Ryan Day talked about sort of starters, backups, and then kind of depth guys or guys who are maybe going to be a little bit more of a deliberate process to being a starter. What did he have to say about that?
Yeah, well, first, you take care of the starters, then you take care of the backups, and then there you got the ancillary, the players. And he mentioned Matt Patricia coming over from the NFL, where he was a G, and he's done this stuff. Mark Pantoni, obviously. But one of the things that that he mentioned about being worried about is you can create some culture issues when guys who aren't playing are the ones that are making more money than the ones who are. And you're talking whether that's splashy transfers, splashy freshmen, a 5-star left tackle who is, you went and got, for $2 million, and they've tried to get some expensive left tackles. And then that guy gets there and, he's watching Austin Searveld as a 3-year starter and whoever else, playing all of these snaps. And as an offensive lineman in college, you're not the flashy player. You're going to be down. They're going to pay the starters what they can, but when you've got a freshman left tackle that comes in and is making close to what a quarterback is making, and he's not going to play for at least a year if he does well, he'll play as a redshirt freshman. That can create some issues, and that's something we've always talked about with the locker room and paying freshmen, and that's what makes Jeremiah Smith special.
Yeah,
because Yeah, there.
No one's questioning anything about what he's making.
Underpaid.
Yeah. And I think you can also look at this approach and, well, why do you think this approach works? Well, 2023, what did Michigan do? Michigan used their NIL for the Those Who Stay campaign to get guys to come back for one more year, to get J.J. McCarthy, to get Blake Corum, to get all those offensive linemen and all those guys to come back for another year. How did it go? They won the national championship. Now, Michigan has spent in recruiting. I mean, Bryce Underwood did not come to Michigan for free, but Michigan also has not been dropping massive bags on everyone. I think they've been much more of like that sort of middle of the road approach. Ohio State last year, what did Ohio State do? Well, same thing. You spent your NIL. You had everyone wants to yell about the $20 million number. They were not the only team that spent $20 million, but they also didn't spend $20 million to bring a bunch of 18-year-olds in who to sit on the bench and be the third team. And they spent it to bring back guys, retain your roster, bring back the 10 or 11 draft eligible guys who came back last year. How did it go? Hey, just like Michigan, they won the national championship. Penn State this year, Penn State's added some guys in the portal, but Penn State brought back Katron Allen. Yeah. Penn State brought back Drew Aller. Penn State brought back Nick Singleton. I mean, all these guys, they've got guys on defense, Dennis Sutton. I mean, you've got all these guys who are notable players who are going to be part of what could be a national championship caliber team at Penn State. That's the approach that you've sort of seen work. Spend a ton of money on the true freshmen. I mean, if someone can point to me the team that has won the national championship doing that, okay, but I can't think of one off the top of my head right now.
Right, and recruiting is the lifeblood of college sports. Retention is really, really important because if Ohio State has the number one class in 2024, but they only retain 4 of their seniors, they're not winning the national title.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And so retention, you've got to get the players before you can retain them. I get that. Mm-hmm. But you can't cut your nose off to spite your face in terms of retention. You have to retain guys. And when there's as much tampering as there is now, like you also have to have essentially a rainy day fund for when somebody comes to you and is like, hey, like if Austin Searveld right now were to be like, hey, I need 50% more, you got to give it to him. Mm-hmm. Like it needs to be there to take care of him because he's that important to the program right now. And so I think you have to prepare for those days and be aware that could happen. And you can't just flush all the money on recruits, especially since you can't technically pay them until they get to campus.
And it's all promises, and it's all and
then if you're going to promise them something, you have to deliver.
You better follow through, otherwise you're going to have some big issues if you don't follow through. And that's not just big issues for 3 weeks. That's that's big issues that can follow you for a while, that can cost you a head coach, all that kind of stuff. So anything else on this end of things before we shift to some of the other stuff we talked about today?
No, let's shift.
Okay, let's shift.
It's your show, though.
Listen, hey, it's our show. Is my name on it? Yes. Doesn't matter. It's still, but it's okay. So got a chance to talk to Ryan Day, Jeremiah Smith, Sonny Styles, and Caleb Downs. I think you were around Ryan Day for the whole thing. I was kind of in and out. I had a couple of things that were going on at that point. So what were the big, let's talk on-field stuff.
Okay, yeah, all right.
We're contractually obligated to start with quarterback. Ryan Day was asked about, okay, so coming out of spring, the 2 quarterbacks were too close to call. Any movement on that? No
movement, but they're both continuing to progress. They're trying to make them as uncomfortable as possible, trying to make this as difficult as possible. And then he said, eventually you'll know when the team knows. Like when the team has found their leader, that's going to be a good sign. He also said they're going to find out who the Iron Buckeyes are like early next week, I believe, because this is where Mick hands the keys over to Ryan Day. And you'll see, did any of the quarterbacks, what kind of leadership growth did they make? What kind of summer did they have? Like this is all, they're competing with each other in everything. And as Ryan Day said, everything counts. And again, you're trying to make things as difficult as possible because the one that rises above that is then the guy that is probably the starter. And then the one who doesn't has still been well prepared to be there when needed.
And Jeremiah Smith was obviously a hot topic as well. I was not over with the interviews that he was doing, but I did run over real quick because I was interested in his thoughts on one catch for 3 yards against Texas. And hey, guess who's on the schedule I'm going to sue Ryan Day for gimmick infringement because he talked several times about the number of days till the Texas game. It's like, hey, that's been my bit for a long time. But he talked about Jeremiah. He talked about Jeremiah Smith and the things that Jeremiah Smith do without even having the ball. I ran over just to ask one of the other OSU reporters who was by Jeremiah Smith, did he get asked about the Texas game? And he looked at me, he goes, yeah, only about every 5 minutes. So yes, so that was a storyline, but I think it's easy to look at the one catch for 3 yards thing and go, well, we'll see. I'm sure Ohio State has a plan to make that not the case the next time they play. But Ryan Day's point was, even if it does, he's still impacting the game without the ball in his hands.
Yeah, you're creating opportunities for his teammates. And I think we talked this morning, tight ends caught 7 passes in that game, and Carnell Tate caught 5 or so. And Ohio State's tight ends this year are pretty darn good. So if you want to leave them alone, that's fine. But also, he said, Ohio State has to figure out ways to get Jeremiah Smith the ball still in those situations. That's where they have to be creative in what they do, whether that's motion to get it to him like they did against Oregon, coming across the field on that first touchdown, finding ways that you're not just subjecting him to a simple 2-man defense type of thing. So I think they're all very challenged to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And I wasn't with Jeremiah at all. I'm guessing the 1 for 3 is probably like something that is in his mind.
Yeah.
And he may have it tattooed somewhere where like, this is something that I will never forget. I will never let happen again. And let's see what happens in how many days, Tom?
38.
38.
I said it at the beginning of the show. Thanks for listening.
I'm sorry, I was not paying attention.
The Jeremiah Smith it feels like he's been at Ohio State forever at this point, right? I mean, like I was looking at Sonny Styles and going, this could be your last year. How is that possible? And Sonny Styles, the 3 guys who were here for Ohio State, Caleb Downs, Jeremiah Smith, Sonny Styles. Ryan Day told a very funny story about those 3 guys trying to check into the hotel.
Yeah, and none of them were allowed to because they were all under 21. So Ryan Day was like, I'll check each one of them in, like a good pops would do. And so just gives you an idea that they are all veterans. Jeremiah Smith, the 19-year-old grizzled vet, and the other 2 20-year-olds needing somebody to. It's a good thing they didn't have to like rent a car or anything.
Oh yeah. They're going to be on their second NFL contract before they can rent a car. But Jeremiah Smith is 19, and typically, Dylan Raiola was here from Nebraska on Tuesday, and I'm looking at Dylan Raiola and going, yeah, he played as a true freshman, and he didn't have an incredibly, I think it was 13 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, something like that. But the fact that you played as a true freshman is like, wow, that really bodes well for your long-term future because, boy, think about what a leap you take typically between your freshman year and your sophomore year. Tony, what does a Jeremiah Smith leap from freshman year to sophomore year look like? Like, what did Ryan Day say about that?
Well, again, he said, he's bigger and he's faster, he's stronger, has a better understanding of the offense. But there's only so much that you can do when you've
because of Earth's yellow sun.
Because of Earth's, yes, and I'll have a story for you after that, after the show, because I do something in writing. But the idea that 1,300 yards and 70-some catches as a true freshman, the numbers may not show necessarily what that next step is for him because you can only go so high with the numbers. But it's everything else. It's his maturity. It's his leadership. It's the crispness of his routes. He's talking about like his routes are better. Like everything is better. So it's going to be exciting again. But he leapt one tall building. It's once you leap one tall building, like what are you going to do? Like that's a skyscraper. So is that one. But I mean, it was pretty. The first one was impressive enough. I don't know that you could do better.
Well, and I have used this comparison on the show before, but I think back to Mike Trout when Mike Trout came up to Angels outfielder, who came up and in his first full season was immediately like, oh, this might be one of the best players in baseball. And it was like, wow, what could he possibly do for an encore? And then he went, well, I'm not hitting high fastballs well. And then he just spent the whole winter working on hitting high fastballs. And then it was, oh, well, now he can hit high fastballs. Now he's better. And it's like, wow, how could he possibly get better? I'm like, well, I want to get better on defense. And I spent his whole offseason working on his defense. And it's like, oh, well, now he's better on defense too. And there's a certain amount of work ethic that goes into this is not just all God-given. This is also incredible work ethic, incredible discipline, incredible focus, which is definitely seems like that's present there in spades.
He also said he's seeing things faster. I noticed that talked about last year how things eventually slowed down for him and sped up for everybody else. I thought like in relation to like the closer you get to a black hole, time slows down, but everything's relative. And he's part of that theory of relativity, I guess.
All right. So here's what, if we want something to worry about, here you go. It's just me. Tim says, do you worry Jeremiah will get too big like David Boston? Well, college football drug tests. So,
and David Boston he was out there at like 260 pounds as like a fifth year NFL guy, fourth year NFL guy. At Ohio State, he was 6'3", 220. As a freshman, he was listed at 205.
Right. Yeah. He did not get too big until well into his NFL career. And no, we just saw Jeremiah Smith. He is a big kid, very solidly built, but he's not in danger of tipping over or anything like that. So no, I think that's probably not a big concern. I was not around for everything, and I don't think I heard conversation about the offensive line. Was there any kind of clarity in terms of where things stand in the offensive line, what they're thinking about with that this year?
Good leadership, good voices. Everybody is stepping up. Said Ethan Onionwa had Mick told him arrow pointing up. Austin Sierreveld, of course, had a fantastic summer, and he's a leader in the room. Carson Hinsman, a leader in the room. He's even said Luke Montgomery. And so you've got Tigger Sabola, who played last year. I think they have to feel really good. A veteran offensive line. I'll ask Ryan Day when we talk to him at camp where, last year, the illness, the camp illness, set them up and paid dividends all season long. This year, all of the injuries last year has set them up this year to pay dividends all season long. So it's like, maybe don't do an encore. Just like, I don't know how you go from here other than as I've suggested before, the chicken pox party, where you get everybody sick so that Austin Sierreveld came out of nowhere last year as a redshirt freshman, and now I'm guessing he would have done that without the illness just because of his makeup, but he was forced into action in camp playing double time. He'd play one snap and go again and he benefited from it, and so. I don't know what the next step is for that offensive line in terms of the next crazy thing that they do, but they're comfortable with these veteran guys. And he even said Ian Moore's name as well.
Yeah, I think Ian Moore is someone who's probably not starting this year, but just the progress he made as a true freshman last year to kind of climb that depth chart feels like that's a good indicator in terms of where his long-term likelihood of starting at Ohio State. Ryan Day was asked about the change in the run scheme and, why did that happen so late in the season where they kind of went to more of a gap scheme in the playoff. And he said a lot of that was just you had the injury to Josh Simmons in the Oregon game, and boom, your left tackle's out for the season. And then they're kind of figuring out, okay, how are you going to handle that? And then Donovan Jackson moves over to left tackle. And okay, now you got that stabilized a little bit. And then Seth McLaughlin goes down, and so you've lost your future first round at left tackle, and you've lost your Remington Award-winning center. And then they're playing three guys out of position because Donovan Jackson is no longer where he was. Plus, you've got the two guys who are filling in for the guys who are injured. And he's just said it just took a while to figure out what they were going to do. And then once they figured it out, then they were able to kind of go with that. So we'll see how much that kind of continues in terms of being their preferred run game approach this year. He was asked at one point, hey, you get a new offensive coordinator. Is that going to be is that going to bring a new offensive philosophy? And it was kind of like, no. He didn't say it's still the Ryan Day offense, but, I think everyone around kind of went, yeah, it's probably still going to be the Ryan Day offense.
He mentioned some of the numbering stuff that Brian Hartline has changed, but everything is going to be as you remember. He was also asked about the running backs, and said, I think they're going to be good, but you don't know because you don't tackle in practice. And he said, Bo Jackson may start out a little slow early on, but he's going to be in the mix later on in the season as he gets some experience.
Doreen wants to know, where is Kevin Noon? Kevin Noon is off working with he has a bunch of video he needs to edit and all that kind of stuff. So yes, we read the live chat. We're not getting through all the questions yet. But yeah, Kevin is, don't worry, Kevin's here. Kevin is just working, and he will have a Big Meat kickoff show that I know he's recording at some point, I think tonight or tomorrow morning. She'll have that coming up as well. So yes, no problem. Kevin's around. So let's talk a little bit on the defensive side of the ball. And one of the things that's great about these events is we've been at these long enough that you can kind of understand, everyone kind of wants to give you the answer that's the right answer, but you can kind of interpret things. And one way that I find like I learn a lot of information is when you get someone with kind of a broad question. And it's not just, hey, how is player X doing? Right. And then you get, oh, player X is great. When it's just, who is someone who has taken a big step or assumed a leadership role in the team or whatever. And you hear the same name over and over and over again from lots and lots of people. Tony, I heard Kenyatta Jackson's name an awful lot today.
He mentioned him as a guy that could have been here if they didn't bring the three guys that they brought. And that's something that's no different than what we heard at the NFL Combine from the departed guys, that Kenyatta Jackson has stepped up as a leader. I think that's fantastic. And if they can keep him this year and have him next year as well, they need help on the defensive line. So the more they have him, the better. And I didn't hear, I wasn't with any of the players, but that is a topic that I wanted to talk about with them, is Kenyatta Jackson, because he's got, it's been around for 4 years. This is his fourth year now, and has never quite done it, but is still he is one of those guys that is very hungry and has been waiting for this moment. And so now we're finally going to get to see what that looks like. I think I have expectations, but I don't know how high to take those expectations. He's one of those guys that I'm interested to see and looking forward to finding out what exactly he is, because we've heard Larry Johnson talk about him for years. We've seen him out there and get close in rotational role. So what does he look like when he's out there for 45 snaps a game in key moments? Does he come up like Jack Sawyer did?
Yeah, and he's someone who all of last year, you'd look at his stats and felt like there was a disconnect between what you felt like you were seeing on the field and what was actually showing up in the stat sheet. When you're at that point, it doesn't take that much of another step to get to, hey, you're a step away from making this play. Now all you have to improve is one step, and then you make the play. So he's someone I think that's definitely someone who you said arrow up earlier. That's something that I would expect him to be on that list as well.
Another name that Ryan Day mentioned, Will Smith Jr.
Boy, that's a spot where boy do they need some arrows up in the middle of that defensive line, because it feels like they feel pretty good about Edric Houston and Caden McDonald. And then what? And, who else do they have in the middle of that defensive line? You need a Tywan Malone. You need a Will Smith. You need a Jason Moore. You need one or more of those guys to step up. Boy, if Will Smith has taken that next step, that would be one of the biggest pieces of off-season news that Ohio State could get in terms of a position of need.
And I believe he was asked again about the portal and defensive tackles, and he said what they ultimately decided was that the guys that were in there were no better than what they had based on their evaluation. And it would be good for them if their evaluation of Will Smith Jr. comes to fruition this season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you don't need him to be Ndamukong Suh. You need him to be similar to the guys ahead of him.
Mhm.
Can he be similar to Caden McDonald? Can he be similar to Edric Houston? You don't need to be Aaron Donald. You just need
Yep.
they need someone else to be good enough to play 30 snaps if they need him to play 30 snaps, because you're going to have an injury at some point. You're going to have, hey, this has been a long drive. This guy needs a break. They just need some depth there. It's going to be hot in Ohio Stadium on August 30th when Texas comes to town, or 31st, whatever it is, when Texas comes to town. You're going to need multiple defensive tackles, and one of the guys that they were probably counting on is going to be in burnt orange in Hero Canoe. So you're going to have to have someone else step up. So that is potentially a very big piece of news for Ohio State. I was with Sonny Styles. He talked about the actually you asked. I think you were the one who asked him. Did you ask him about
No.
No, then it was someone else. Asked him about
Somebody very intelligent and thought-provoking.
No. Someone asked him about TJ Alford and Riley Pettyjohn and those guys. And, Sonny Styles made an impact as a true freshman. And you saw, you've seen young guys like Arvell Reese kind of take a step up. It sure seems like he's a big believer in TJ Alford and Riley Pettyjohn and their ability. These are not guys who are going to supplant him as a starter or supplant Arvell Reese as a starter. They don't even necessarily need to be backups. They feel pretty good about Peyton Pierce and Garrett Stover as well. But, man, if those guys are ready to at least step up and be, play a role this year, that doesn't necessarily mean huge things for the 2025 Buckeyes, but it might mean real big things for the 2026 Buckeyes.
And Sonny Styles is going to want to leave Ohio State in good hands.
Yeah.
Everybody talks about wanting to do that, whether it's Lathan Ransom, Emeka Ibuka. Like when they're gone, they don't want to drop off. They want to keep it going, and that's a pretty good linebacker class that James Laurinaitis signed. And so I'm expecting to see them somewhere. I think we keep talking about them on special teams, because there's only so many blowouts to get a true freshman in, and we know how reticent Ohio State is to play true freshmen if they don't need to in games that are close.
Yeah.
So they're only – you look at the schedule, I don't know how many opportunities there are going to be for these guys to play defense.
Yeah.
They can win a spot on special teams, I think, and then you go from there. But I'm excited to see them. I've heard nothing but good things. Seen nothing but good things from them in the spring, and if they had a good summer, wouldn't shock me.
You mentioned Sonny Styles heading off to the NFL potentially after this year, which, again, he should have graduated high school 2 years ago. So this doesn't seem like that could even be possible. But this is his third year, so he could potentially be off the NFL. Is he a senior? 23. Oh, he is.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Oh, man. Oh.
Live reaction.
I need to go lay down somewhere.
Tom's a year older than he thought.
Oh, man. I have no problem renting a car. Goodness. But it's the last year for Sonny Styles. It's also the last year for Lorenzo Styles, his older brother. I asked him about just the opportunity to play with his brother, and this, one last season, and just what their dad, Lorenzo Styles Sr., who was an Ohio State linebacker, who then went on to play in the NFL, just what he's talked to them about, and just I think there's just a really strong recognition of what a unique opportunity this is for them as a family to have the two of them playing together. I asked him for a scouting report on, he was talking about, this is a real year of opportunity because you've got all these guys who are gone, and now you've got one of these lots of spots open. And I said, well, one of those guys who left was Jordan Hancock. Give me a scouting report on the guy who's taken over for him. And he said, freak athlete in Lorenzo Styles.
Great genes.
And I got to tell you, I'm one of three boys. It is very hard to say something nice about your brother. So I'm like, this is like really meaningful to me that you're saying something nice about your brother. That really tells me you really mean it.
And again, I don't know if we talk about it enough how important that nickel position is and how effective Jordan Hancock was with it last year. And if they can get something similar, then that sets this defense up very, very well. And if it's Lorenzo Styles doing it, then he's big, he's fast. He would love to be involved in the return game. He just wants to be involved, and I think he's going to be this year.
Yeah, for sure. He's got a role. And, when you are trying to replace someone like Jordan Hancock, who felt perpetually underappreciated, at Ohio State. Those are always the guys where it's Jordan Fuller leaves, and then it's once Jordan Fuller's gone, everyone goes, oh, hey, he was pretty good. And it's like, we've been trying to tell you this for years. And they have a couple of those guys. Ty Hamilton is gone. Jordan Hancock's in that group. You've got a lot of those guys who Lathan Ransom's probably in that group to a certain degree. So yeah, that's definitely going to be an area where they're looking to have people step up. Anything else from Ryan Day today that we haven't touched on yet?
No, because we didn't get in the breakout him to talk about the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And again, just so you understand, we've got 45 minutes with him. It sounds like a long time. There's 30 people there shouting, just waiting for their opportunity. And it's it's really, really difficult to get all of the questions that you have. Plus, then there's a couple of tangents, like the NIL thing was big. So that took a big chunk of it, but didn't get it. He talked about the playoffs on the
podium.
The podium the first time, but that sort of thing. He was asked if he would be in favor of scrapping the Big Ten championship game if they were playing games, and it seems like that wouldn't bother him, because he said, "Is the championship game, the conference championship game, the right thing anymore in this model?" It's a good conversation to have. I think that's interesting. He also mentioned Bennett Christian as a guy stepping up.
Yeah, and again, that's something where if it's not, hey, tell us about Bennett Christian, if it's who stepped up, and that's the first name that comes out, that's really generally a pretty meaningful thing.
He also said, at his age, Jeremiah Smith is further along than anybody I've ever been around.
Yeah, anyone who got asked about Jeremiah Smith today, there were other coaches that got asked, there were other players who got asked, and everyone was just there was just a lot of shaking of heads, and it's shaking of head brackets complimentary. It's people I think have kind of almost run out of ways to say it's wild, man. Chip has discovered the life hack here. If you say something nice, we will put it on the screen. Thanks for the excellent reporting as always. And then a tremendous question here. Is there any fear that Kevin will get an NIL deal for another group? What must we do to keep him? I don't know. This feels like you're setting me up to ask for super chats. I don't know. I mean, listen, NIL go. I don't know what the clearinghouse is going to approve, but
yeah, NIL deal for Kevin.
And I mean, let's talk for a minute about NIL deals in the NIL clearinghouse, because Ryan Day was asked, hey, have you guys run into issues with deals not getting approved? Because there's been all sorts of reporting about some huge number of deals, percentage of deals, 70% of deals are not getting approved for the NIL clearinghouse. It doesn't sound like that has been that kind of an issue for Ohio State to that degree, but they've run into some of that at least.
Yeah, he was asked if there have been any deals that have been kicked back and denied. And he said, yeah. And somebody said, how much money do you think it's cost players? I'm not going into that. But yes,
I've learned my lesson from saying numbers out loud.
But it's not like everything has been rosy there for Ohio State and getting their deals in. But we've seen, I don't remember where it was reported, but there have been 7-figure deals approved by NIL Go in college football. So people want to talk about market rates and things like that. I mean, that's a pretty decent market.
Yeah, and you could see that. I mean, someone like Jeremiah Smith, where our kids buying shoes, because he's got to deal with Adidas, right? Yeah, he's got to deal with Adidas. Are kids going to buy a Jeremiah Smith shoe? Yeah, I bet they probably will if Adidas puts together an advertising campaign around him. How many players are like that? Not that many, but he's on the cover of the video game. Yeah. So there are people in charge of selling stuff who think that his name and image will sell stuff.
He was wearing an NBA Jam shirt today with himself and Emeka Ibuka on it.
That was a great shirt.
He should have and I don't know if he's selling it, but if he's not, he's maybe not the marketer that we thought he was.
I think that might be an Homage shirt. I've seen Homage do those types of shirts before, so I'm going to guess.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If he's not part of that marketing, then Homage just got. Thank you.
Yeah, well, if he's wearing it, I'm sure he's in on the deal. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we haven't talked about as far as Ohio State stuff. There was a lot of talk around the Ohio State players about Penn State.
Yeah,
go ahead. Go ahead.
I think one of the things he did actually talk about the playoffs.
Mhm.
He says it makes no sense not to have 4 automatic qualifying fires. If you're in the Big Ten, you've got 18 teams. He also said that if you go to the 5+11, there's no reason to do the Power 4 non-conference game.
Yes.
And then they would just go away from that. Now, what's already under contract is under contract. They would play those. But there's no reason to play Texas anymore, or no reason to play Georgia anymore if there aren't automatic qualifiers, because you're just playing in a beauty pageant that is going to be decided by 12, 16 judges on the selection committee. So why even give yourself the possibility of losing a non-conference game?
Well, and I think that's a good point, because if you look at the history of the committee, the committee traditionally, and virtually in every case you can look at, looks at, oh, well, who has 0 losses? Great, you're in. Okay, who has 1 loss? You're the next batch in. Okay, who has 2 losses? Well, you're the next batch in after that. Alabama lost 3 games last year, and so they were out. And yeah, they lost to Alabama had a couple bad losses last year, but the drumbeat from the South was, well, but look at all the good wins they have. Well, it shouldn't matter, but they were out based on the losses. Sometimes that's right, sometimes that's wrong, but that's how, Ohio State has missed the playoff a bunch because, well, they had they have a loss and it's a bad loss. And so what kind of wins do they have? Doesn't matter. They have the loss. And so if it's set up where losses are punished and losses are the deciding factor to a pretty significant degree, you are incentivized to play an easy schedule and take Kurt Cignetti was not a big fan of people using Indiana as an example of coasting on an easy schedule into the playoff. But you're not disincentivized from being 11-1 with no real signature wins, because if you're 11-1, congratulations, you're in. So the system is set up to punish losses. So therefore, if you're risking losses, the benefit you get from a win, if it's really truly a coin toss, if the benefit you get from a win is not better than the punishment you face for a loss, then you're disincentivized to play good games. And, to Ryan Day's point, that's a bad thing for college football, because, as he said, I think a lot of people are excited about the Ohio State-Texas game. Yeah. And it would be great if you had, you've got Ohio State-Texas this year. You've got Michigan-Oklahoma this year. But you also have Penn State playing I can't
Villanova, Nevada.
Yeah, it was
maybe Florida International.
It was one of the international, so not a direction, but one of the Florida honorariums. It's you would be better. You would be a better sport if you had more great games. So you should be incentivizing people to do that. But I saw people commenting on the Ryan Day thing, which is like, this is crazy. You won't play you're scared to play a 10th power conference game. That's nuts. And it's like, well, that's people respond to incentives. Like, take an economics class.
And that was Kurt Cignetti's point as well, playing a 10th power 4. He's like, we're taking the SEC approach. We're only playing 9, which is, the SEC has their 8 conference games, and then the most will play another Power 4 conference team. And one of the other things that Ryan Day was talking about is the 9 conference games versus the 8 conference games, because he said if you just leave it up to a committee, the teams that play 8 conference games are going to have fewer losses.
Yeah,
because they're fewer conference games.
Yes.
So if you add one more conference game, then everybody in half of the teams in your conference is going to have another loss. So they're going to look worse for it. That's another reason why he wants the automatic qualifiers, rather than just, he first off, he would like everybody to, I guess, probably play the same number of conference games. Tony Petitti today said, well, it's not really that important. It's like nothing. But I think the Big Ten would like the SEC to play 9, just to be on even footing, because, again, of the beauty pageant portion of this.
Well, and I want to make sure we sort of explain that again so people will understand. You're playing more conference games. So in each of those conference games, one of the teams in the conference is going to take a loss. That's how it works. One team wins, one team loses. So not only do you have more teams where, okay, I just went from 2 losses to 3, and 3 losses knocks me out of the playoff because of the way we do things. So therefore, more teams are getting knocked out of the playoffs because of the way we do things. But also, that team that has 3 losses, not only are they knocked out, but now my win over them is not as good because now it's not a win over a team that's 10-2 or 11-1. It's a win over a team that's 9-3, and it's not a top 10 win. Now it's top 20 win, or they're the 21st team. So you're punished. That team is punished. Every team that has beaten that team is punished, and it's purely based on math. It's not some subjective measure. It's you're playing this number of games, so you're going to have this many conference losses. And when you're measuring things with number of losses as basically your primary deciding factor, well, you're not really incentivized to play more games because that hurts you. So I just wanted to kind of walk through that. Yeah, it's just me. Tim says, is this the Monty Hall paradox? Yes. So you have to, yes. So if the SEC says you play 9 games and the Big Ten says you play 8 games, when Monty asks if you want to trade, you always trade. That's what that works. Yeah, that works. Yes. I have to do this. JG says Leroy Jenkins, now more than ever. All right. Steve says Tom, Tony, and Kevin. Nope, back to Leroy Jenkins. Tom, Tony, and Kevin, best
Just
in the
like
beat,
he would.
along with Biddle.
God,
See,
Leroy.
no drama. Appreciate it. Thank you, Steve. Even though you said something nice about Dave, we like Dave. Dave's not out here,
Yeah.
so we'll.
He would like to be.
He would like to be, yes, but. So I was going to say earlier, there was a lot of questions for Ohio State players about Penn State. Like, I'll try and put together a video. Yeah. And a lot of times you get the NFL draft or NFL combine where it's like, wow, a lot of people are asking about the Jets. It's like, no, there's just one guy who writes for the Jets asking about the Jets. But you're also, no one's going up and asking Ohio State about Minnesota.
Right.
Like, there's a lot of questions about Penn State for Ohio State because that is Penn State was picked. We talked about this on the morning show. The Penn State was picked to be the team that wins the conference this year. Ohio State second, very closely behind second, but second. That feels like, last year Ohio State Oregon was Ohio State Michigan is always the game, but last year Ohio State Oregon felt like, oh boy, this is kind of the game of the year in the Big Ten in some ways. It sure feels like Penn State Oregon, Penn State Ohio State, those are going to be 2 absolutely massive games this year. I mean, kind of potentially league-defining games this year.
Were the players asked more about Penn State than Michigan? Is this just a situation where it's like it's uncomfortable to talk about?
Well,
Michigan, you're not going to get great answers.
Well, Penn State's here tomorrow, so I think there probably were more Penn State. I don't know that I saw Michigan people.
So this is Penn State writers.
This is Penn State writers. Yeah, it was Penn State writers asking about it.
I got you.
At least in many cases.
That makes sense.
At least in many cases, but I just thought that was kind of interesting. There was a national reporter who asked Ryan Day, what do you need to beat Michigan? And great news, Ryan Day knew the answer.
Yes, score more points.
That was a direct quote, period, close quote.
Next question. He didn't say next question.
Yeah, no, he said that, and there was kind of this pause, and then it was like, oh, well, and we're moving on. So great news. He has the answer. He knew it right away. Didn't have to think about it at all. So that was good. We also got a chance to talk to one of my favorite interviews every single year, Bill Carollo, the Big Ten's director of officiating. He is one of my favorite interviews every year because there's always sort of a sense with people that outside of certain individuals, Kurt Signetti does not fall in this bucket. Brett Bielema does not fall in this bucket. But there's generally a sense that people are trying not to make too many waves, not to say anything that's too, sometimes you're trying not to say anything at all. There's questions you don't want to answer. Bill Carollo just will answer your questions. You get a very straight answer on a lot of stuff. He will give you all sorts of detail. I love talking to Bill Carollo every year. I have the whole thing. You'll get a morning show with a bunch of these answers later, but he talked about one of the big rules changes this year being the rule about players going down and faking injuries.
Mhm.
That's a rule to watch, a rule change to watch this year.
It's not really a Big Ten problem. He didn't want to say it's more of an SEC thing, but it's more of an SEC thing.
I don't want to say which league it is, but it's the one that has Ole Miss in it, because
Yes.
Ole Miss does this constantly.
Yeah.
Yes. Tennessee, not great with it either. But yeah, that's one of the big rule changes this year. What other big takeaways did you have from our time with Bill Frola?
One of my favorite and least favorite things is you've got a question, and he will go for a couple minutes on it. And so he's there for 30 or 45 minutes, but he may only answer like 10 questions because he's really thorough. But in talking to him about the accountability of and the transparency, I asked him how often well, I said, when it comes to accountability, not that accountability is only being fired, but how many guys did you not bring back this year? What's an average number? And then he didn't, and that sort of thing. And he didn't tell me how many guys they didn't bring back, but he's like, generally it's like 2 a year. And overall there's like 7% change overall, be it somebody going to the NFL, somebody not being asked to be back. You got some retirements and things like that, or somebody moving into the front office of the Big Ten officials. So about 7% change over every year. But yeah, he is the father, godfather, grandfather of the Big Ten officials. And he's like watching over all of his children, hoping that they do very well. And that's why I asked him, when there's a targeting call, do you get you just get a little bit nervous because this is a tough call, and it's going to look one way live and it's going to look a totally different way on tape. He's like, yeah, you get a little bit of you just hope that the refs they got it right, but they've got replay to fix everything, Tom.
And I know that everyone thinks that their league's officials are the worst. He was asked about holding calls in the Big Ten. No one knows what targeting is. No one knows what holding is. You could call holding on every play. You could call holding on no plays. Yeah. And he said that the Big Ten on average they throw like 13 flags a game on average. It's more like 14 in other conferences. So they are throwing fewer. And he said that's a little bit at the behest of the coaches who don't want the game to be completely taken over by penalties. But he said, they work a lot with officials on what is holding and what isn't. Because, yes, you could call holding on any play, but he said a lot of times it's a difference between, did you grab and have a little bit of jersey separation, or did you grab and have a little jersey separation where it cost someone a step? Because if it costs someone a step, that's a holding call. You can have jersey separation, where there's a little bit of a pull and tug, and you're not going to call anything. That's sort of where the line is there. I thought that was an interesting distinction.
And that's the other great thing about Bill Carollo is you just jersey separation, pull and tug, and so all of these, he gives you all of the referee terms that he talks about that they're looking for. So he gets in there, he gets fired up about it. Yeah, it's one of the things and we even came in this year, we're like, there's no big change. What are we going to talk about? And it's like, boom, right away, we get into it. And he starts without questions. He just gets into it. And then you're like, well, what about this? He's like, oh yeah, this, I do think it's interesting. Should have asked about the lack of holding calls against Ohio State's defensive linemen last year.
Ooh, that's a good one. I didn't think about that one. Yeah. What's the stat? They ended up getting one in the Cotton Bowl, right? So, but that was the first one against a player holding an Ohio State defensive lineman. I think it was Tyleik Williams in the Cotton Bowl, but it hadn't happened before that for multiple years, I think, right?
Was it there was maybe one in the non-conference game, but in a Big Ten game or a Power 5? I forget the stat because, so much happened, but it been a while.
Yeah. One other change that you're going to notice this year, there is no more the call stands, the call is confirmed, either the call is upheld or the call is overturned. That's it. And he said, basically, it doesn't matter. There was always a lot of consternation and well, the ball hit the ground. How could you just say the call stands? Obviously, the call should have been upheld. It doesn't matter. The call doesn't change. And he said, basically, from their end, it's what is the result of the play? Is the call changing or not? No? Okay, then we don't need to spend an extra 15 or 20 seconds figuring out whether it's upheld or stands. It's just the call is changing, the call is not changing. We're moving on with life. So that's another change that you're going to see. There were a couple sort of positional and alignment kind of rules to do with in the kicking game, and you can't have people lined up in certain spots. There was a rule that it was sort of inspired by, I think, was it the Notre Dame Northern Illinois game? There's a Notre Dame game where there was a weird kicking alignment thing, and you have to have 5 guys with jersey numbers in the 50s and 60s and 70s on the field at the same time.
I did ask him about the Oregon 12 men, and he said it was a loophole, and so they didn't. It was against the spirit of the game. So right away, the Big Ten went to the NCAA. Is like, we need to change this. The NCAA is like, yeah, okay, let's change it, and it was fixed within a couple of days.
And he mentioned another rule. I think you asked him about another. Hey, is this the first time you remember that happening? And you talked about a kickoff rule where someone had kicked the ball out of bounds 3 times, and with the old kickoff rule, you ran a bunch of time off the clock, and so there was this loophole, and you could intentionally do it. And I was racking my brain. I'm like, this sounds so familiar. Where was this? And I was over with Brett Bielema, and he brought it up in like a completely different context. And he's like, I think it might have been in the context of like NIL rules or something. He's like, listen, if there's a loophole, people are going to use it. And when I was a new head coach, there was this kickoff rule, and I'm like, I
was going to ask, was that 2006 then when the clock started on the kickoffs, because they wanted to get rid of
right, and so he talked about the fact that it was against Penn State, and they were trying to run out the last 15 seconds of half or whatever it was, and he said, so we just kicked the ball out of bounds 3 times, and Joe Paterno lost his mind. It was like, okay, it was just this wonderful payoff to just. Bill Curl had mentioned that, and I was thinking, this sounds so familiar. What was this? And just Chris Chris Pratt from Parks and Rec? Yeah, the Chris Pratt gif where he's just like, it all came together. That was me listening to Brett Bielema complete the circle there on that story.
Brett was also good the morning session, afternoon session, where he talked about when he was this first year as a head coach in the Big Ten. Jim Tressel and Lloyd Carr both pulled him aside and said, hey, you're going to be representing young men. You need to build and lead young men. He's like, those meetings are so great. I was such a young coach, and you get into these meetings with all of these coaches, and you got Joe Paterno yelling at Jim Delaney. It was awesome.
Yeah, he's always great. He's fun. Curt Cignetti was fun. It was so funny listening to Curt Cignetti today, because this time last year you came to the Big Ten Media Days, and it was kind of like, well, Indiana's going to finish 16th out of 18. There's not, we knew Curt Cignetti had done a good job at James Madison, but it's Indiana, so it's going to be whatever. And I remember listening to him talk last year. It was like, this guy knows something. Like, and it was like, this guy knows something at Indiana. It's like, well, crap, maybe they're going to win 7 games. Like maybe they'll win the Pinstripe Bowl. That'd be incredible. And then they make the college football playoff. And this year you're listening to Curt Cignetti talk, and it's like, well, yeah, I mean, yes,
I've Googled
He talked about, Indiana's been playing football for 126 seasons. That was the best one. And, what do you do for an encore? And it's just kind of like, yeah, I don't, you don't assume there's a step back, because it's like, well, I mean, I just watched this guy work a miracle. This guy, the loaves and the fishes this guy produced last season. Like, are you betting against him this year?
I don't know. I think it's a slap in the face to the Copper Ball and Anthony Thompson, frankly. But yeah, I would be interested to go back and listen or watch last year's shows from here to see what we were saying about Curt Cignetti, because it felt like this guy believes it. So like, yeah, I believe it.
Right.
This is how cults start.
It's not dissimilar, but yeah, I remember last year thinking like, it just, I felt like I mentally adjusted my Indiana win projection up by about like a win and
7.
a half, just listening to him talk. And it was, I mean, like, wow, maybe he'll work a miracle and they'll win 7 games. And like, no, they'll win 11 games. And what were the odds? I think they got picked 16th or 17th or something like that in the Big Ten last year. So yeah, it was quite a remarkable turnaround for them. Let's hit a couple questions real quick. We'll hit a couple quickies here. Troy V says, if the SEC goes to 9 conference games, we'll never hear of poor old Mercer ever again. Pour one out for the.
But there's still room for Mercer. Ohio State's playing Youngstown State's. Like there's still room.
Yeah. Pour one out for the poor Citadel who.
Wow, that's.
Play your tin horn. To learn more, Google Citadel, Nick Saban, and tin horn. not on a work computer. Let's see, run quick through this real quick. Mike Ferguson says, if James Franklin and Drew Aller are in the game, I feel good about Ohio State's chances. I mean, you can't do it until you can do it.
Yeah.
Every first-time head coach has not been able to do it until he's been able to do it. And the first-time head coaches who have been able to do it haven't always been able to do it again. I mean, Larry Coker was a first-year head coach, I think, who won the national championship, never won it again. Ryan Day couldn't win the big one, air quotes, couldn't win the big one until he could. And then he won the big one 4 times in a row, won the national championship. So that's, I don't know that there is how long was Jim Harbaugh at Michigan before Jim Harbaugh started winning the big one? And, you can mentally append whatever you want to that. But,
the Drew Aller thing, he completed 66.5% of his passes last year. But in the postseason, 51.3 against Oregon, 59.1 against SMU, 52 against Boise, 52 against Notre Dame. So he was probably a 70% completion guy before the postseason. And then they're playing their best teams. And he was 12 of 20 against Ohio State. Like, yes, generally quarterbacks can have their worst numbers against the best teams.
Right.
But 127 yards passing, 171 yards passing, 135 yards passing in their last 3 games. If he is the best quarterback in the Big Ten, I'd like to see more from him. And if he's that's of course, JJ McCarthy. Those are probably JJ McCarthy's yardage totals, and you've got that Penn State running game. And if Tyler Warren is taking direct snaps as well, and Bo Pabula is taking direct snaps, not in the playoffs. But, there's only so many yards to go around, especially in the gimmicky offense that they do, where they run the ball the way they do. I want to be wowed by him, and I've never been.
Yeah, and I think there's also everything good is because of the quarterback. Everything bad is because of the quarterback. The quarterback has to have someone to throw to. Penn State wide receivers had 0 receptions in the Orange Bowl against Notre Dame. That's not entirely a Drew Aller problem. We'll see how Penn State basically did a line change at wide receiver this year. We'll see how that translates. And, you would assume he will be better this year. This is his 3rd year as a starter for Penn State. So that's something that, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen now. It isn't generally like, oh, you take your biggest step in your 4th year. We'll see who he has to work with and all that.
I also wonder how much of my opinion of him is still clouded by the 2023 Ohio State game where he's 18 of 42.
Yeah, and Ohio State fans have not seen him have incredible games. That's certainly true. But that's true of everyone for Penn State. Penn State has found a way to not win the Ohio State game.
Not true of Zach Mills.
Well, that's true.
Although I don't remember what his numbers were. I just know
Zach Mills is also old enough to rent a car and has been for quite a while. Let's see. A lot of people mourning the passing of Ozzy Osbourne in the comments. Sig Miyag says Thomas bragging because he thinks like Bielema. Is that really a brag? Listen, I know he's not everyone's favorite. He is great. He is fantastic at these events, and it's not just funny. It's also thoughtful answers that he'll talk about stuff. He just kind of doesn't give a crap.
No.
He got up in front of the Big Ten Network live broadcast today and talked about being out in Vegas and how he met his wife here, and then kind of said, well, we didn't tell him more of that story. And it was just kind of like, wow, that was a thing you said out loud in front of a live TV audience. And Mike Ferguson says, Bielema talking about his wife in Vegas was something. Yeah, and she was here and she said that there and listened to his press conference and all that kind of stuff. He's a funny guy, but he's also a very thoughtful person. And
I love him.
He talked about the fact that he was on the college football rules committee. Like, he's been on that committee. He talked about the fact that he and Kirby Smart, he said, I had a great conversation with Kirby Smart. I know not everyone has great conversations with Kirby, but he had a great conversation with Kirby Smart, Georgia head coach, obviously. So, he just kind of will say stuff, and it's just kind of like, wow, you really feel like, oh, we're really getting the unvarnished truth here.
Yeah, no, he's like, I'll always say, like, he's just refreshing because he just talks, and sometimes he says stuff he shouldn't, and then and that's even more fun. Tom, with the Ozzy Osbourne thing, should we set up a number for Super Chat of like how many, I don't know, bats, mice will Kevin bite the head off of for like $200?
Oh man,
Is one enough?
I think it's a lot. I mean, how many does he do? One? I think he could do. I think he could do two.
I mean, everything progresses. That was one way back then.
Mhm.
Nowadays, you should be able to do three.
I think this is an unrelated. One, but we're going to pretend it's not. Kevin Noon doesn't give a crap, so there you go. He'll do as many as you want.
There you go.
JG says so. Let's hit a couple more. Murphy wants to know: are there 3 Big Ten players for every team? Yes. The way this works is 18 Big Ten teams spread over 3 days: 6, 6, and 6. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. 1 head coach, 3 players for each team, and you'll get the head coach for 15 minutes on the podium in the front of the during live stream for Big Ten Network, and then you get the head coaches for 45 minutes in the breakout session in the afternoon, and you get the players for 30 minutes each during breakout sessions in the afternoon. So you can talk to lots of different guys if you're not. I mean, we on Ohio State Day we're generally parked at Ohio State guys and listening to their whole thing, but tomorrow or Wednesday, Thursday, we can bounce around and talk to a bunch of different people. I'm always interested to talk to James Franklin because he's a lot like Brett Bielema, where I know there's a lot of people who don't like him, and I know there's lots of people who have thoughts on his coaching and all that kind of stuff. You always learn something from James Franklin, and so
he's
I'm
very thoughtful.
Very, very interested to talk to him.
And then today I saw there were some players just basically with their phones out waiting for somebody to talk to them as they sat there for 30 minutes and sorry, Maryland didn't come to see, Maryland reporters didn't come to talk to you or whatever.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, and that was another interesting thing. Why is the Big Ten champion? Why is the Big Ten Media Day in Las Vegas this year? Because I was under the impression all along that this was like, we're going to do something for the what? Nope.
Yeah. It was logistical issues in Indianapolis. They couldn't do it. So let's go to Vegas. And he's basically like, Vegas is just easier. Hey, I'll tell you what. I didn't have to get off of one plane onto another to get to Vegas. I mean, it was straight shot. 4 hours to Vegas, 3 hours to Indianapolis. Mm-hmm. Would you rather have gone here or driven to Chicago? Because that's.
Can I choose Indianapolis?
You get Muncie or nothing.
It's the David Letterman. The David Letterman conundrum. Hamasira wants clarity on what the Monty Hall paradox is. The short version of that is that in the game show, what was what Monty Hall? It's to make a deal, right?
Yes, let's make a deal.
Let's make a deal. He shows there are 3 doors, and you have to pick. 2 of them have nothing behind them, or a goat behind them, and one of them has whatever, a new car or a bag of money or whatever it is. And you pick a door. I pick door number 2. And then Monty goes, okay, I'm going to show you what's behind door number 1. And you open door number 1, and there's a goat behind there. So now the money is not behind door number 1. So it's either behind 2 or 3. And then Monty says, would you like to change your answer to number 3? And there is a very long answer as to why this is true. But by changing, you increase your odds of getting it correctly, to getting the answer correct. And this is a very hot topic on extremely dorky corners of the internet. And I don't remember how this came up during a show at some point last year, but it'll pop up in our comments every time. And then I feel like we have to kind of explain it. If you Google Marilyn Voss Savant, who was the woman with the highest IQ in the world, she used to write for Parade magazine in like the 80s and 90s.
The Sunday newspaper.
And a newspaper is a paper that
one story at a time.
Yes. Okay. If you Google Marilyn Voss, VOS Savant, she wrote a column explaining this, and then there were lots of people who got angry and said she was wrong. And then this is like a thing that college math classes will take on every once in a while. And the answer is yes, it does. It's a long story, but yes, that's the Monty Hall paradox.
But only slightly.
Only slightly. JG says, why hasn't the hammer fallen on the University of Michigan? Have we been sold a bill of goods?
Well, who is selling that bill of goods?
Well, that's certainly one question. The answer is nothing has happened to them. Yeah. Nothing good, nothing bad. The Committee on Infractions has not issued its final punishment yet. That's coming in the next month or so. It's expected before the season. It is 60 to 90 days after the last Committee on Infractions hearing, which happened on June 6th and 7th,
45 days ago?
Yeah, give or take. So it is expected to come out before the season, but it hasn't come out yet. would it be fascinating for that to come out on Thursday morning while we are out here and waiting to talk? I mean,
would that be the kind of revenge for putting the letter out this week where it's like, okay, 2 can play at this game.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and not necessarily drop the hammer, but drop the
report, right?
Yeah.
Right. And the letter was, we've talked about this on previous shows. We'll hit on it very briefly, but there was a leak to Dan Wetzel of ESPN, pretty clearly from the Michigan side of things, that Tony Petitti, Big Ten commissioner, had written a letter to the Committee on Infractions, basically saying, like, please don't punish them anymore. Haven't they suffered enough? Is kind of the short version of that.
Won't somebody think of the children?
Won't somebody please think of the children? And so that letter was written to the Committee on Infractions and in time for their hearing in early June. And then lo and behold, it leaked to Dan Wetzel of ESPN the day before Big Ten Media Days, when Tony Petitti was going to be standing up in front of, God and the nation on Big Ten Network and answering questions. So what fascinating timing that was. So yes, if you were trying to shape the narrative of, hey, hasn't Michigan suffered enough? That's what you would do. So that's the letter that Tony was referencing. Thank you to JG, $20 super chat. Appreciate it. I can only assume that this is for the Kevin Noon Bat Consumption Fund. So thank you. We will your contribution is noted. And Kevin, good news. You need to eat 1/10 of a bat now. So that's
find the bat with the smallest head.
And we have one from Troy Bielema. Belongs in the Big Ten. He's a stereotypical Midwesterner. He talked about, he went to Iowa. And and then was the coach at Wisconsin, obviously, and then went to Arkansas, and it just didn't work.
Yeah.
And he talked about the fact that he kept looking at his schedule and is like, okay, we have to play Alabama every year, and we have to play Auburn every year, we have to play Texas A&M every year, we have to play LSU every year, and then you give me Georgia across divisions. He's like, I was, however long he was there, 3 years or 4 years, whatever it was. He goes, somehow we never got Vanderbilt. We never got Kentucky.
And that's the SEC scheduling. They will reward they will protect the top schools.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Mozart's Goats wants to know if they ever found Mel Tucker. He is off the radar for sure.
Probably does he still have his money, or?
He probably has the money he was paid, but he doesn't. He had a big remaining contract that he did not get. David says, 2 good guys just putting in work with zero drama. I could drink a beer and play euchre with these guys. Well, Tony is an Ohio native, so Tony can definitely.
I can drink beer and play euchre. Tom can do neither of those things because he's an East Coast elite.
I have gotten euchre proficient just because I figure at some point we're going to be at something and we're going to end up playing euchre. And
Kevin's got cards.
Well, Kevin's not here. Kevin don't work here no more. That's not true. He does. But he has to eat a bat first before he can play cards.
Doesn't have to eat the bat. Tom, you're creating too much. No, he does not have to actually ingest the bat. He just has to bite the head off the bat.
Mike Ferguson says if Sharon Moore gets a show cause the morning of, does he still have to show up to the interviews? And Signy Yog says it'll be interesting to see if the penalties to Michigan causes any recruits to decommit and or players to leave in droves after the season. I mean, all that stuff. I mean, this is all very speculative right now.
Yeah.
And we have been doing our very best to not go down that road because I don't think that's particularly productive. What it means long term in terms of recruiting, in terms of roster retention, tell me what penalty they're going to get, and I will tell you what it means in terms of all that stuff. Because if you have your past wins are vacated and they have to vacate the national championship, whatever past backward facing stuff you want to say, that's not going to have any impact on the stuff moving forward. If you have, you would, I'm sure they would prefer to not have their national championship trophy removed from Schembechler Hall, but it wouldn't necessarily have an impact moving forward. If it's a forward-pacing penalty and there's some kind of a postseason ban, especially a multi-season postseason ban where it's not just 2025, but it's also 2026, that's when you get into, it's going to be hard to bring in players in the transfer portal next year if you can't go to the postseason, that kind of thing. And everyone wants to tell me exactly what the punishment's going to be. And it's like, congratulations, we can all make guesses. That's great. Point me to the exact precedent for this exact case that you're citing here, chapter and verse, because I have not yet found that one.
And if it's a 1-year postseason ban for this year, it does not impact recruiting at all because
Correct.
those players aren't involved.
Correct.
The 2026 class doesn't care.
Hummus Hero wants to know, what did the East Coast elites play? Bridge and Champagne. That is, I don't even, I can't really say guilty as charged, but
Right.
yeah.
Do you like bridge? Did you play that in the Sunday paper too?
I have the Omar Sharif bridge column. I mean, I'm old enough to remember it, but
Clearly no.
yes, and it's only bridge if it's from the very specific portion, the bridge portion of the Northeast. Otherwise, it's just a sparkling. It's just
you're conflating. You're mixing your metaphors.
Okay. No, I'm not going to put that one on there. Let's see. I think we are good. I think we're caught up. So thank you guys all for joining us. Just to give you a sense for what we've got coming up the rest of the week, because Ohio State is done, but we have 2 more days here. There's going to be a ton to talk about. Wednesday is 6 more teams, including Oregon and Penn State. So guessing those are 2 teams that Ohio State fans are going to be interested to hear from. We'll have all day coverage coming up Wednesday. We'll have all day coverage coming up Thursday. That is Michigan Day here and USC Day. And I guess there's going to be some interesting stuff to talk about with those teams as well. We're going to have our plan is to have a live show on Wednesday morning. We're aiming for 11 a.m. Eastern time. We'll have a live show sort of previewing the day. We'll answer your questions. We'll talk about whatever stuff. We're going to end up going back and going through a bunch of interviews and talking about a bunch of different stuff and cutting some more videos for you. So that'll be coming up. Later tonight and on Wednesday morning. And then we'll be back again at 8 o'clock or give or take 8 o'clock p.m. Each night with another live show after that. So plenty of stuff coming for you all week long at BuckeyeHuddle.com and YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. If you make sure if you subscribe both places, we will make Kevin do even more terrible things.
2 bats.
2 bats if you subscribe both places. So make sure you can check us out there. If you enjoy talking to us, that's a great place to do it. We are on our board there all the time, answering questions, discussing the latest news with Ohio State and the rest of college football, because boy howdy is there a lot of stuff to talk about. So thank you guys all for joining us. Really appreciate it, and we will talk to you tomorrow.